I was still holding my fork when my sister tilted her head, smiled sweetly, and decided to turn Christmas dinner into a stage. She wrapped her arm around the man sitting next to her and said, loud and clear, "So, this is the failure of our family." The table burst into laughter. Not surprised laughter. Familiar laughter. The kind that says this joke has been practiced before. I didn't flinch. I didn't lower my eyes. I didn't rush to defend myself. I simply placed my fork down and looked up calmly, as if nothing important had just happened. My mother smiled awkwardly. My father laughed a little too hard. My sister watched my face, waiting for embarrassment, waiting for collapse. It never came. What caught my attention wasn't them. It was him. Her boyfriend didn't laugh. He didn't smile either. He just observed. Quietly. Carefully. Like someone taking mental notes. Before I tell you what happened next, pause for a second. If you've ever been disrespected in a room where everyone expected you to stay silent, tap like. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from. One question though, have you ever been treated like you didn't matter just because you chose not to argue? My name is Evelyn, and I'm in my early 30s. For most of my life, I've been the one people underestimate, the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who doesn't demand attention. That night, no one defended me. And honestly, I didn't expect them to. I'd learned something important years ago. When people believe you're harmless, they stop being careful. And when they stop being careful, they reveal everything. My sister leaned forward, enjoying the moment. I mean, she said lightly, she's always been ambitious. Just never successful. Talks a lot about ideas, but nothing ever really sticks, right? More laughter. My father added, she's still figuring herself out. I nodded once, slowly. Not in agreement. In acknowledgement. Inside, I wasn't hurt. I was alert. I noticed how my sister straightened her posture every time she spoke, as if this humiliation was a performance she wanted approved. I noticed how she kept glancing at her boyfriend, waiting for validation. And I noticed how he kept his eyes on me longer than expected. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct them. I let the moment breathe. Silence makes people uncomfortable. And uncomfortable people fill it with arrogance. She's always been jealous, my sister continued, smiling. I mean, look at me. Career. Relationship. Stability. Some people just don't grow. I smiled softly. Not sarcastic. Not bitter. Just calm. That confused her. Because she was used to reactions. Tears. Defensiveness. Anger. Something she could control. Instead, I sat there, composed, as if her words weren't landing. What she didn't know was that I wasn't absorbing her insults. I was watching her patterns. The way she spoke without thinking. The way she exaggerated. The way she assumed no consequences. People who feel powerful talk too much. And my sister felt very powerful that night. She leaned closer to her boyfriend and said, honestly, she should be grateful. Not everyone gets invited back home after doing nothing. That's when he finally spoke. Not to her. To me. Is that how you see her? He asked calmly. The table went quiet for half a second. My sister laughed it off. Oh come on, I'm joking. He nodded slowly, eyes still on me. Interesting. That word hung in the air longer than it should have. I met his gaze for the first time and gave a small, polite smile. No explanation. No defense. That's when something shifted. Because confident people can sense when a room has misjudged someone. And he had just realized they had. He didn't say anything after that. He didn't need to. The conversation restarted, but the tone had shifted. My sister kept talking, louder now, filling the space like she always did when she felt the spotlight slipping. She began listing her achievements without being asked. Promotions. Connections. Parties she attended. People she managed. Each sentence was polished to impress him, not us. You know, she said, glancing around the table, some of us actually worked hard to get where we are. We didn't just drift. My mother nodded quickly. My father hummed in agreement. I stayed quiet. I'd learned that when someone is trying this hard to prove their worth, they're usually hiding how fragile it really is. Her boyfriend listened patiently. He asked simple questions. Neutral ones. The kind that sound harmless but aren't. Oh? How long have you been with the company now? And who do you report to directly? Big team? She answered eagerly. Too eagerly. She named departments. Mentioned internal projects. Bragged about being essential. Every answer stacked neatly on top of the last, like bricks in a wall she was building herself. I noticed something else too. She exaggerated. Small things. Titles that sounded slightly inflated. Responsibilities that didn't quite align. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to matter. At one point, she laughed and said, "Honestly, if I left tomorrow, the place would fall apart." That's when he smiled faintly. Not amused. Not impressed. Curious. The dinner dragged on. Dessert was served. Wine glasses refilled. My sister relaxed again, confident she had regained control of the room. She turned back to me one last time. "So," she said sweetly, "what are you doing these days? Still, figuring things out?" Every eye returned to me. I could have corrected her. I could have explained. I could have defended myself. I didn't. "I'm doing fine," I said calmly. That was it. No details. No justification. She laughed. "That's vague." I smiled politely. I like keeping my life simple. Her boyfriend watched that exchange closely. After dinner, people began standing up. Plates cleared. Chairs scraped. My parents moved toward the kitchen. My sister pulled her boyfriend aside near the tree. She whispered something, laughing again. I caught fragments. She's always like this. Doesn't take initiative. Zero ambition. I put on my coat quietly. That's when my mother stopped me near the door. "Try not to take her jokes personally," she said, lowering her voice. "You know how she is." I nodded. I do. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I stood on the porch, breathing slowly, letting the noise behind me fade. A minute later, the door opened again. He stepped out. "Hey," he said. "Do you have a moment?" I turned. "Sure." He hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but they don't see you very clearly." I shrugged lightly. "They never have." He studied my face. "You're very composed. Most people would have reacted." "I've had practice," I said. He smiled, this time genuinely. "Well, it was nice meeting you." "Likewise." That was it. No dramatic exchange. No secret revealed. No confrontation. I got into my car and drove away while the house behind me glowed warmly, full of laughter that wasn't meant for me. For the next few days, nothing happened. No messages. No apologies. No fallout. Which is exactly why everyone thought the story was over. At work, I focused quietly. I kept my head down. I answered emails. I attended meetings. I didn't mention Christmas. Then, 3 days later, my sister called me. She sounded irritated. "Did you say something to him?" I frowned slightly. "About what?" "About me." "No." She scoffed. "Well, he's been weird. Asking questions. Digging into things. It's annoying." I paused. "Questions like what?" She hesitated. "Work stuff. Structure. Reporting lines." "Why?" "No reason," I said gently. She exhaled sharply. "Whatever. I just wanted to make sure you didn't try to embarrass me." I smiled to myself after hanging up. Because I hadn't done anything. And yet, things were already moving. The following week, my parents called me over for coffee. They were tense. "Your sister's been stressed," my father said. "There's some situation at her office." My mother added, "Her boyfriend is involved. Apparently, he's higher up than she implied." I kept my voice neutral. "Isn't he a CEO?" "Yes, but," my father stopped himself. I waited. "Well," my mother said carefully, "not of the company she works at. Of the parent firm." I nodded slowly. That explained the questions. The silence. The observation. Suddenly, my sister's confidence made sense too. She hadn't realized how close she was to real power. And how exposed. A few days later, she texted me. "Did you know about him?" I replied honestly. "No." She didn't respond. That Friday, I saw a familiar car parked outside my building. He was waiting near the entrance. I hope this isn't strange, he said when he saw me. I wanted to talk. We walked to a nearby cafe. He got straight to the point. I don't mix personal relationships with professional blind spots, he said calmly. And I've realized I missed something. I listened. She represents herself very differently at home than at work. And that matters. I sipped my coffee. People perform where they feel safe. He nodded. Exactly. There was a pause. I checked her file, he continued. Her actual role. Her conduct. The complaints that never escalated because of internal politics. I met his eyes. And I don't make emotional decisions, he said. I make informed ones. I leaned back, steady. Then you'll do what you think is right. He smiled faintly. I already have. When I got home that evening, my phone was buzzing. Missed calls. Messages. Panic. My sister finally left a voicemail. They called me in today, she said, voice shaking. HR senior leadership. They had documents. Emails. Feedback. Things I didn't even know were on record. She paused, then whispered, he was there. I sat down slowly. She hadn't been fired yet. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. And the irony was simple. I still hadn't said a word. I listened to that voicemail twice. Not because I was shocked, but because the tone was unfamiliar. My sister had never sounded unsure of herself. Even when things went wrong, she usually blamed someone else. But this time, there was no anger in her voice. Just fear. I didn't call her back. That wasn't strategy. It was instinct. I knew that if I spoke now, anything I said would either comfort her or warn her. And she didn't deserve either. Over the next few days, small details started surfacing through people who didn't realize how closely I listened. A cousin mentioned my sister had taken a sudden sick day. My mother complained she wasn't answering calls. My father said she was overthinking things and that her boyfriend would handle it. I stayed neutral. I nodded. I changed the subject. What no one knew was that the night of Christmas dinner hadn't ended at the table. After I left, he hadn't gone back inside immediately. He'd stood on the porch for a while, replaying conversations in his head. The questions. The exaggerations. The way my sister spoke about work like someone untouchable. And unlike my family, he was trained to verify instincts. He didn't investigate her because of me. He investigated her because she'd given him reasons. When we met at the cafe, he hadn't told me everything. He didn't need to. I could read between his pauses. She hadn't lied outright. She'd inflated. And in companies built on accountability, inflation is dangerous. A week later, my sister showed up at my apartment unannounced. Her eyes were tired. Makeup rushed. Confidence cracked. You knew, she said the moment I opened the door. I looked at her calmly. Knew what? She stepped inside without waiting for permission. That he had power over my job. That he could do this. I closed the door slowly. I didn't know who he was until after Christmas. She laughed bitterly. So you're telling me this is just coincidence? I met her gaze. I'm telling you I didn't humiliate you. You did that yourself. Her jaw tightened. He's questioning everything I've ever done. That's what happens when people look closely, I said. She paced the room. They're reviewing my performance. Old complaints. Feedback I was never shown. I stayed silent. That's not fair, she snapped. I tilted my head slightly. Were your jokes fair? She froze. For a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, you could have warned me. I exhaled slowly. You never warned me. She left without another word. 2 days later, the call came. Not to her. To me. It was him again. I wanted you to hear this from me, he said calmly. We're terminating her contract. I didn't react. I see. There's more, he added. Her access is being revoked. And professionally, this will follow her. I thought of the Christmas table. The laughter. The word failure. Do you feel responsible? He asked gently. I answered honestly. No. He paused. Good. Neither do I. That afternoon, my parents called. This time, their tone was different. Your sister lost her job, my mother said quietly. I know. Silence. My father cleared his throat. She's devastated. I didn't respond. And, her relationship, my mother added, hesitant. It's over. I closed my eyes briefly. Not in relief. In recognition. Because this wasn't revenge fueled by rage. This was consequence fueled by truth. Later that evening, my sister sent one last message. You ruined my life. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. No. I survived mine. I didn't block her. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I went to sleep peacefully. The next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't expected. An apology. Not from her. From my father. He didn't say much. Just one sentence. We should have protected you. I sat with that for a while. Because sometimes, the real reversal isn't public. It's internal. People start seeing clearly, too late. And the person they misjudged never had to raise their voice. The fallout didn't explode loudly. It spread quietly. That's what surprised everyone. My sister didn't post anything dramatic. No angry messages. No public breakdown. Just silence. The kind that follows when someone realizes they've lost control of the story. But control has a way of resurfacing when people think they can still rewrite the ending. A week later, my parents told me there would be a small New Year's gathering. Same relatives. Same house. They asked if I was coming. You don't have to, my mother said carefully. We understand if you don't want to see her. I'll come, I replied. Not because I wanted closure. Because I knew something was unfinished. When I walked into the house, everything looked the same. Decorations still up. Familiar smells. Familiar voices. But the energy was different. People greeted me more cautiously now. Softer. Like they were reassessing where I fit. My sister was already there. She stood near the window, phone in hand, posture rigid. When she saw me, her smile flickered, just for a second, then settled into something forced. Her ex was there too. That part surprised everyone except me. He wasn't invited as her boyfriend. He was there because my uncle worked with his firm. Business overlap. A coincidence no one could undo. The room slowly filled. Conversations overlapped. Drinks poured. My sister moved quickly. She laughed louder than necessary. Told stories about toxic workplaces. Made vague comments about betrayal and ambition. People listened. Some nodded. She needed the room back. At one point, she raised her glass. I just want to say, she began, voice polished, this year taught me that not everyone supports your growth. Sometimes the people closest to you secretly enjoy watching you fail. Her eyes flicked to me. The room went quiet. I felt the old instinct rise, the urge to explain, to defend, to clarify. I didn't. He set his glass down gently. Actually, he said calmly, that's not accurate. Every head turned. My sister froze. He continued, unhurried. What ended your role wasn't sabotage. It was documentation. She laughed nervously. This isn't the place. It is, he said evenly. Because you're rewriting events. The silence thickened. You misrepresented your responsibilities, he went on. Dismissed peer feedback. Took credit you didn't earn. And when I asked questions, you answered without verifying facts. Her face drained. I didn't fire you because of anyone here, he added, glancing briefly at me. I fired you because of you. My sister's glass trembled in her hand. That's unprofessional, she snapped. So was humiliating someone at your own family's table, he replied. No anger. No volume. Just truth. No one laughed this time. My parents didn't move. My relatives stared at their drinks. The room that once felt safe for her suddenly felt very small. She turned to me, eyes sharp. Say something. I met her gaze calmly. I don't need to, I said. That was enough. She left shortly after. No speech. No goodbye. The rest of the evening continued quietly. Conversations shifted. People asked me about my work. My plans. My life. Not out of pity. Out of curiosity. Later, as I put on my coat, he stopped me near the door. You handled yourself with restraint, he said. Most people don't. I've learned patience, I replied. He nodded. It shows. Outside, the night was calm. Cold. Clear. I walked to my car without looking back. Because the ending wasn't about humiliation. It was about alignment. People saw what they needed to see when they were finally ready. And I didn't need applause to know where I stood. The weeks after that were quiet. No more calls filled with urgency. No dramatic explanations. Just distance. My sister moved out of our parents' house soon after. She said she needed space. What she really needed was separation from a version of herself she could no longer defend. My parents didn't talk about her much. When they did, it was careful. Regret sat in their voices now, not loud, not emotional, just heavy. One evening, my mother called and said something she'd never said before. You were always strong, she admitted. We just didn't notice, because you didn't demand it. I thanked her and ended the call. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't need validation anymore. Life didn't suddenly transform into something cinematic. No promotions announced. No applause. No dramatic glow-up montage. What changed was quieter. People stopped assuming. Stopped joking at my expense. Stopped mistaking silence for insignificance. At work, conversations shifted. Colleagues listened more closely. Decisions included me without me having to push. Not because I had power. Because I had always had clarity. A few months later, I ran into him one last time at a professional event. We exchanged polite smiles. Nothing more. Before leaving, he said something that stayed with me. People think leadership is about speaking loudly, he said. It's actually about noticing what others ignore. I nodded. Because that was the lesson my family learned too late. I never confronted my sister again. I didn't need to. Consequences had already spoken in a language she understood. I didn't win by humiliating her. I won by staying exactly who I was, calm, observant, unreactive. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. People who rush to humiliate others do it because they're terrified of being seen clearly. So I let them speak. I let them perform. And when the truth finally arrived, it didn't raise its voice. It simply ended things. Quietly. Permanently. And I walked away unchanged. By the time spring arrived, no one mentioned Christmas anymore. Not because it was forgotten, but because the lesson had settled in. My sister found another job eventually. Smaller company. Lower title. Less applause. She stopped calling herself a leader and started calling herself busy. We spoke rarely. When we did, the conversations were careful, stripped of jokes and superiority. That was the real shift. Not her fall, but her restraint. My parents changed too. Subtly. They listened more. Interrupted less. Sometimes, my mother would look at me mid-conversation as if she was noticing something she'd missed for years. And I didn't remind her. Because growth doesn't need reminders. It needs space. What people never understood is that I didn't stay quiet because I was afraid. I stayed quiet because I trusted time more than arguments. Anger wants an audience. Patience waits for the truth to arrive on its own. That night at Christmas, I didn't lose dignity. I lent it to the room and watched who dropped it. Revenge didn't come from raising my voice or exposing secrets. It came from letting people reveal exactly who they were when they thought there were no consequences. And when consequences finally showed up, they were clean. Legal. Irreversible. I didn't walk away feeling powerful. I walked away feeling light. Because when you stop fighting to be seen, the right people eventually look closer. And when they do, you don't need to explain anything at all. You just let the truth finish what patience started.